Hey everyone, my name is Scott, and I just want to introduce myself briefly. 13 years ago, I became a protest medic at Occupy Oakland, and I've been pretty involved in the folk medicine scene and the protest medic scene since. I just want to make this video to address some misinformation I've seen going around about abortifacients. And what abortifacients are is they are basically herbal remedies or herbal ways to induce an abortion. And we're seeing with Project 2025, we are going to lose access to abortion, which is critical to bodily autonomy, which is a fundamental right that the government is actively trying to take away from you. So there are tools that you can use to get around that and preserve your bodily autonomy and your choice. If that offends you, there's an X button you can click on and minimize this video, or you can put a cape on and be super mad about it. I cannot tell you how to do abortifacients or what would work, and I cannot give you medical advice. This is not what this video is for. I'm here to help you avoid problems with taking these. 8 years ago, when I was in college in Missouri, I was very lucky to have a mentorship with an herbal person, an herbal clinician, and fortunately, Missouri was having they were being really fucky with their abortion laws, and she gave me some insight into abortifacients, and I trained for about 6 months on how to use them. Now, that said, you should never, no matter what you read on the internet, you should never ever read, or you should never ever use abortifacients without medical supervision. As I'll cover later, there are a lot of risks associated with it. You shouldn't even touch the plants without protection. When I was being instructed, we used the nitrile gloves because some of the plants, if you get the juice on your hands, you'll get dermatitis. And my reason for making this message is a few weeks ago, one of the states did something with abortion, and I saw a meme on TikTok, and the woman said, "Did you know?" And the meme said, "Did you know you can use pennyroyal to induce abortions?" Which is true, but if you use it wrong, you're going to get liver damage. And she didn't go into anything about how to harvest it or anything like that, which you have to be very careful for. I'm working off a loose script for this video. I'm not trying to get internet famous or make this my career, so there's no ring light and this won't be edited. But it's too important to remain silent on this because this could easily end up with a body count if people do things wrong. Now, we've been using abortifacients for hundreds of years. There's plenty of research out there on the internet. And there's even video lectures on YouTube you can watch from different organizations. But you should never, ever, ever... I've been at punk shows like when I was in high school, back in the day, where people passed out a little zine with abortion methods. And those usually don't work or they're not safe. And I'll explain some more on that because in different formats, I've worked with them. Now, I'm cis and I don't have a uterus or any birth parts. So this doesn't directly involve me, but I'm in solidarity with women, so... And I generally care about women, so... This is important. So basically, despite what you research, no vitamin C will most likely not give you an abortion. If you take a lot of it, it'll give you diarrhea for sure. Trust me. That's been verified. Which I can't go into, but... Basically, there's a book you can read on this. It's called Natural Liberty by Sage Femme Collective. The danger with that is herbal stuff isn't a one-size-fixes-all. Because back during COVID, one of my comrades got COVID, and she used herbal expectorants to treat her COVID, and she cured herself. I tried that, and it didn't work. And after 9 days, I was actually dying of COVID, and I had to be intubated, and I ended up having a stroke while intubated, so I got this flipper hand. So herbal stuff isn't a one-size-fits-all. So that book is very useful. It'll give you methods, but you're better off training with an herbal clinician or someone who has done this their entire life. I can't tell you how to find them, but I'll tell you how I found mine. When I was in college, the goal was to get my doctorate in ethnobotany, which is folk medicine, basically. And I put it out in the local herbal community that I wanted to learn more about abortifacients when Missouri passed this really messed up abortion restriction. And so I was given contact info, and I reached out, and I spent like about a 6-month partnership where I learned this. And when you learn this stuff, it's more do not, do not, do not, because the plants are poisonous. You're basically poisoning yourself to induce a uterine abortion. And we do have more reliable chemical means of abortion, but they're probably going to become illegal. So now is your time to stock up on mifepristone and misoprostol, I think the other one is. So this stuff's very important. You can't just run into it, and you can't just like read an internet article and think you know how to induce an abortion, because this is dangerous. Because what if that fetal tissue's not expelled? It's going to go septic, and then you've got sepsis on your hands, which is a whole other bag of chaos than a fetus. And my big concern about people with the common pennyroyal and tansy and rue, those are toxic, and so hospitals are going to look and they're going to see miscarriage symptoms and they're going to see liver damage, because if it's not dosed exactly appropriately based on your body weight and other factors, it's going to cause liver damage. And so the person's going to end up in the hospital, and hospitals are going to take 5 minutes to see miscarriage symptoms and liver damage, and they're going to know exactly what you did. And then you're going to end up with feticide charges like Purvi Patel in Indiana. And that's a felony, and you'll go to prison. I don't want that for you or anyone. And that's you or your loved ones, so we need to be smart about this. We managed to survive this through the first half of the 20th century until Roe versus Wade gave people the quote-unquote constitutional right for abortion, which is gone now. So we've got to be smart, and we've got to read our history. Now, there were networks there, which you could see the pitfalls of if you watch Dirty Dancing, which I did when I was way too young. But it left a mark on me, because I remember the one character, she had to do an abortion. And the guy basically, he messed her up because it was illegal and it was dirty. And I don't want us to go back to that. So what I'm telling you to do is research. This is when you want to educate yourself and go out into your community and find the herbal clinicians, because they're out there. And they're not just going to instantly teach you how to do herbal abortions. This is a partnership. You have to work at this and cultivate this relationship, because it's built on trust, because it's going to be illegal. So, well, illegal. Because so was the Holocaust and slavery and apartheid. And what Israel's doing in Gaza. That's legal. So, you have a right to bodily autonomy. It's a fundamental right. You don't have to let them take it away. Make them pay for everything they take from you. And there are plant allies out there. The Native Americans use these for thousands of years. And you don't want to do the white settler thing. Don't just go into their community and ask them for help with their knowledge. That again requires a lot of work and reciprocity and partnership. I don't know how to tell you how to find like the indigenous herbal people, because the indigenous people I work with, they're anarchists, and I met them through the anarchist milieu, anarchist activism. But I would never go into their community and just ask them for their sacred closed practice knowledge, which that's wrong. And like I said, I can't emphasize this enough. Do not ever just go on Google and Google like abortifacients. I mean, I can't stop you from doing that, obviously, but most of that stuff is wrong. It's not going to work, because I know the vitamin C doesn't work. The only thing it did is it gave the person we worked on it with, it gave them very severe diarrhea. We tried all different types of vitamin C in all different dosages, and eventually got to the point where we were coming up on the date of viability, where all the surrounding states that allowed abortion at Planned Parenthoods, it got to the point where the clock was ticking, and we had literal days where it was like, if we don't get like an actual abortion right now, it's going to be a bad thing. And none of this stuff works on ectopic pregnancies. That's another thing. Abortifacients generally only work within the uterus. If it's an ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy where implants in the fallopian tubes, that requires medical intervention to cure, which is basically an abortion to cure. And unless you're a Republican senator like that woman in Florida, I think her last name was Kamek, where she had the governor on speed dial, so she needed the ectopic pregnancy treated, so she called him up, and she got an abortion to get the ectopic pregnancy removed. And she's still alive, and of course somehow blaming the left for all this. But yeah, there's no abortifacients that work on ectopic pregnancies. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to become a news cycle's sad news story, because that's exactly what they'll do with you. I mean, look what they did to that poor woman in Georgia, where she was dead and rotting, and they kept that baby in her uterus and harvested it out of her decomposing, rotting body. So don't underestimate the depravity of the state. They'll do anything to enforce their rules on your body. So it is your right to use the tools we have in our environments, but you've got to use them smartly, and you've got to use them in an educated way. And secretly, you cannot brag about this online, because I guarantee you will go to jail. Because they'll find you. They're going to start hunting people down that do this stuff. I already saw a news article. There was recently a politician. He's all butthurt about how the Drug Administration is not cracking down on what they call unapproved abortion methods, which is basically mailing mifepristone. So they're going to use the Comstock Act to basically make it so we can't mail mifepristone to people in red states. We're going to have to figure out logistics of that, which that's beyond me. And thankfully, we have Canada and Mexico, and there's definitely going to be people who are going to get that stuff across the border to us. But that's nothing I'm able to speculate on. I just look at our history. The thing to remember is rich white women are always going to have access to abortion care. They're going to be able to fly to Canada or Switzerland like they did back in the day. And that's obviously not fair. So we have our ways around it, and it's time. We have time to use our brains and the resources around us and in our communities to inform ourselves and then start this process, because it's a long process. It took about 6 months, and I'm no expert. I know what I need to do, but I still don't. I wouldn't know the dosage. I would never do it anyway. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where there might be emergencies, and needs must. But we cannot rely on those old wives' tales. Like, if you grew up in a community with a lot of Puerto Rican and Dominican people like I did, there's an old wives' tale that Malta Goya, which is a drink, Malta Goya and an aspirin will induce an abortion. That does not work. It doesn't work, trust me. It's been tried. I've seen these obscene claims on the internet with people taking a lot of aspirin to induce one. Like, no, that's going to cause liver damage and might make you hemorrhage. Or you could even have like a brain bleed if you do enough aspirin. So that you can't mess around with this stuff. You can't just like do a little bit of internet research and then start telling people what to do. This is really serious, but it's time to get serious. And I'm sorry this video is like bleak and scary, but we live in a bleak and scary time. So it's time to educate, agitate, and organize, as we anarchists always say. And this is the time to do it. We've got plenty of tools, and thankfully right now we've got time. Because right now they're currently imploding over the Epstein lists, which I love for them. But it's only a limited amount of time before they come after abortion and contraception. So for right now, use contraception. Don't even mess with this, because there's probably not going to be Planned Parenthoods. And unless you have lots of money where you can fly to Canada, which I'm sure there'll be mutual aid networks set up for that in the future, but don't rely on that, because mutual aid only works if material conditions are good enough for it. And it's going to get to the point where people just don't have money to give to these types of campaigns. So at some point, needs must, we're going to have to take this into our hands again. You don't have to use a coat hanger. That's barbarity. Those days are gone. And hopefully people are stockpiling mifepristone. I think the other one's misoprostol. Hopefully people are stockpiling them, and they'll be distributed. So now's the time to find like your local anarcho-feminist collective, which they don't exactly advertise themselves, because a lot of people are currently starting to go underground because we see what's coming, and we've seen it since November. But it's getting serious now, so now's your time to get out in your community and find the people that are doing the work. I can't tell you how you do that, because I'm not going to expose people. But this is where meeting people is important. I know there's social anxiety, because I struggle with that, but you just have to do it. And you know the people to avoid. Someone with a thin Blue Lives Matter flag is not going to help you with this. Don't trust them. And definitely not a Trump flag. They're probably going to have access to abortion, because they have enough money for AR-15s. So they're going to fly to Canada and get an abortion, most likely, or Mexico, because medical tourism is a big thing down there. And it's not fair to us who are like trapped here. But you know, these are the days we face, and all we can do is do our best. And that's what I'm trying to help people do: is keep yourself and your loved ones safe, because it might not be your loved one, it might be you. Because who knows, you might be intimate with someone and you might get pregnant. And we no longer have easy tools available. And there's a lot to read about with those tools, because there's different mechanisms too. Like some of the drugs only work to prevent implantation of the egg cell. I think that's how Plan B works. It prevents implantation. And then the other ones actually they induce abortion. Just like these abortifacients, there's a lot of moving parts here, and I'm no expert. I've just been fortunate enough to have a little training. And I would never put myself out as an authority, and neither should you, no matter how much training you have. Trust your doctors and herbal clinicians, and find the people in your area who've been doing this for decades. There's probably, if you live in the mountainous area like I do, there's probably some Meemaw up in the forest who's been doing this stuff from her cabin for like 40 years. I met them in the Ozarks when I lived there. They're around. You've got to find them too. And they keep themselves buried under layers of secrecy because their work has never ever been quite legal. I don't know. I'll never be in that position, so I don't know how I would feel about the safety or reliability of that. But like I said, we're going to do a point where needs must. So us who are like able-bodied and mostly able-minded, we should be educating ourselves and finding the people to mentor under who can teach us these skills to keep our communities alive and thriving. Because not all of us are going to make it out through this period. We've got to do our best to make sure as many people as possible do. I don't want to go on and make a huge video. So I don't really have much more to say. But get the book Natural Liberty by the Sage Femme Collective. And if you look on Amazon, there's another Natural Liberty book, which is like some sovereign citizen wackadoo stuff. You don't want to mess with that. Make sure it's got this weird fractal design on the cover. I'll put the link in the description, but it's by the Sage Femme Press. And like I said, I cannot emphasize enough, do not trust some janky zine you buy off Etsy or you get at a punk show. Even if it's like a feminist punk band. Don't trust that stuff, because it could get someone you care about or yourself hurt severely. Because liver failure is not a good way to go. And neither is sepsis from having fetal material left in your uterus. That's not a good way to go. So I wish you the best of luck. And that's it for today.